Hey, what's up guys? This video is for 9-5 section 9.5, which is solving quadratic equations, and it is by using the quadratic formula. So we are looking at a specific formula and we can use it to solve for a quadratic equation. So what is a quadratic? Just to review for you guys, quadratic is when you guys have an x with the square, and that is the highest exponent. The 2 tells you guys it is a quadratic. So every time you guys want to solve a quadratic equation, well, this formula helps you guys to find the x-intercepts, or you guys can say the solutions of the function or the equation. You can also say the roots or the zeros. All those names mean the same thing. You want to know what is the x value. Now, every time you guys want to use the quadratic formula, and this is what it is right here, you must have the standard form, this one, equal to 0 every time you guys want to use the formula. Now, what is the formula? X equals opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, everything divided by 2a. What you need to do is find the values of a, b, c, substitute into the formula, and then you guys need to simplify. Now notice that we do have a plus and a minus here. So what that means is we are going to get two answers most of the time. Sometimes you get one answer, but you need to use those two signs, plus and a minus. Inside of the radical is the square root. That's just the name of the symbol. So the square root, the name is radical. So inside of the radical, or like I said, the square root, there's something called discriminant. All of this expression here, b squared minus 4 times a times c, is called the discriminant, which helps us know how many solutions we are going to have. So there's a few options when you solve a quadratic equation. You guys can have two real solutions, you guys can have one real solution, or you guys can have no real solution. Now, let me talk about the no real solution. If you guys don't have a real solution, we need to go into imaginary solutions. But in Algebra 1, we don't really work with imaginary numbers. That's going to be more in your upper math classes, Algebra 2, and so on. But just make sure that you know that you might have no real solutions, but it doesn't mean that you have an answer. It just means that it's not real. It's going to be imaginary. But let's go ahead and talk about a little bit more about the discriminant. And notice that I did circle the inside of the radical, the square root, not the square root, because the discriminant doesn't have a square root. So here I have the three options I just mentioned for the discriminant, and we have some examples to show you guys what's going to happen with the graph and how does the discriminant help us. So let's look at example number 1. Here we have the equation x squared plus 2x plus 5 equal to 0. So it is a quadratic equation because the highest exponent is 2. That's a quadratic. We want to solve for x, but first we want to know how many solutions and type of solutions we're going to have. So the discriminant, the formula, this is what is inside of the radical, the inside of the square root, b squared minus 4 times a times c. Well, we know that a in this equation is 1 from the x squared right here, b is 2, and your c value is 5. So when you guys substitute those values here, here, and here, and you guys will simplify this expression, well, these numbers, when you substitute, we get a negative 16. You don't have to get negative 16 every time, but it just depends what are the numbers. But you might get a negative 2, a negative 7, negative half, negative whatever number. But the discriminant tells you that if this answer is negative, and that's the key word, if it is negative, what that means, the parabola, and you guys see the graph here of this equation, the parabola is not going to cross the x-axis. So the x-axis is down here, the parabola is on the top of the x-axis, and it goes up, not to the x-axis. So that means we have 0 x-intercepts. It's not crossing the x-axis. What that means, when the discriminant is negative, we have 0 real solutions, or you can say no real solutions. In my previous videos, I did show you guys how to graph quadratic equations by graphing, and we did talk about when the graph is not crossing the x-axis, we have no real solutions. So that's what the discriminant tells us. We don't even have to graph it. This one here is just a graph so you guys can have a visual, but you don't need to graph it to find out how many solutions, how many real solutions you have. The second equation here, x squared plus 10x plus 25. A is 1, B is 10, and C is 25. When you substitute into the formula, you have the B, 10 squared minus 4 times 1, that's your A, and C is your 25. You do all that work, you simplify, and we get 0. So the answer is 0. So when you guys have a discriminant that equals to 0, well, when you look at the graph, the parabola is going to be on the x-axis only at 1 point. And let me plot the point right there. Only 1. And it doesn't matter how the equation is. If the discriminant is 0, the parabola will be exactly at 1 point on the x-axis. The parabola might go down, and it can be in 1 point. So when the discriminant is 0, we say we have one x-intercept. It's only crossing, or not crossing, it's touching on that point. So we have one x-intercept. And what tells you? That tells you that we have one real solution. So that's what we want to know, how many real solutions we have. And the third example here, 2x squared plus minus 7x plus 2. A is 2, B is negative 7, C is 2. You plug in the negative 7 square here, minus 4 times 2, that's your A. And then you guys have 2 again, that's your C. You simplify and we get a 33. Well, the key word is the number is positive right here. So when the number is positive, and it can be a positive 2, positive 7, positive 100, positive 33. But if it is positive, what that is, when you graph it, is the parabola is going to cross at 2 different points. 2 different points. So we have 2 x-intercepts or 2 real solutions. So quick review here so you guys know how the discriminant helps us. When the discriminant is 0, we have, so let me underline the words. I'm sorry, I said discriminant 0. We talk about negative. So let's talk about the discriminant equal to negative. If the discriminant is negative, so we have a negative 16 or a negative 7 or a negative 2, whatever number, but it is negative, we have no real solutions. When the discriminant is 0, now this one it equals to 0, we have one real solution. And when the discriminant is positive, we have 2 real solutions. And that's what we want to say. When it's positive, we know we have 2 real solutions. When it equals to 0, we have 1 real solution. And when it's negative, we have no real solutions, which means we have imaginary, but we're not going to do those imaginary in this class. Now for the picture, when you guys have a negative discriminant, the graph is not going to touch the x-axis. When the discriminant is 0, the graph touches only 1 point on the x-axis. And when the discriminant is positive, the graph touches the x-axis 2 points, or 2 different points. So let's actually talk about how we can know how many times the product is going to cross the x-axis with these equations. I have different equations, and how many types of real solutions we are going to have. So we do want to state the value of the discriminant. So we want to say what is the discriminant for each equation, and we want to determine the number of real solutions. So the first equation that I have is x squared minus 5x plus 6 equal to 0. And that's the one of the things you must have when you want to use the discriminant, or in my next video, I am going to go with the quadratic formula, and it's the same thing. You want to have the equation equal to 0. Now here, my a value is going to be 1, that is the coefficient in front of the x squared. B is negative 5, that's the one with the x, and C is your positive 6. After you know everything equals to 0 and you know which one is your A, B, and C, I'm going to use the discriminant formula to find out how many solutions I'm going to have, how many real solutions. So I'm going to write down the discriminant, b squared minus 4 times a times c. And notice that I'm not using the square root, just what's inside in that quadratic formula, what's inside of the radical, the square root. So I am going to substitute b squared, so that's a negative 5 here, minus 4 times a, that's a 1, and times c, that is a positive 6. When you guys simplify that expression, it equals to 1. So my discriminant, the value of the discriminant is 1. Now, that's not telling you the number, doesn't tell you guys how many solutions we have. it's the type of number. Now this one, it's a positive number. So 1 positive, that's the keyword, positive. It means that we have 2 real solutions. So the keyword, solutions here, the keyword is positive. You guys have a positive discriminant, 2 real solutions. Now this one here, we don't have everything equal to 0. So what I have to do is get that 10x to the other side. So I'm going to do the opposite. That is a positive 10x. So I'm going to subtract. Minus is the opposite of plus. So subtract 10x from both sides. You guys subtract. So I'm going to have x squared minus 10x plus 25 equal to 0. This cancels here. And remember that all this expression here, we don't have like terms. We have an x squared, we have an x. Those are not like terms. The 25 doesn't have an x. Those are not like terms. And you always want the standard form in order. So standard form for a quadratic equation, you always start with the highest exponent, the x squared, and then you guys go down to the x, and then you guys have the constant. My a value for this one here is going to equal 1. So there's the invisible 1. B is negative 10. And c is positive 25. I'm going to write down the discriminant, b squared minus 4 times a times c. So I'm going to substitute my b value. My b value is negative 10 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times your c value, which is 25. You guys simplify that, and we get a value of 0 right here. So the discriminant is 0. Let me write the word here, 0. Now, a lot of people get confused with this one because when they see the number 0, they say, we don't have solutions. No 0 solutions or 0 real solutions. Well, that's not the case, guys. When the discriminant, the value is 0, we are going to say that the parabola is crossing, or not crossing, touching the x-axis only at one point, only one time. So we say that when the discriminant is 0, we have a 1 real solution. So that's what it means. When you guys graph, you guys have the parabola, the vertex, that's the one point, the vertex will be on the x-axis. We're only going to have one answer, 1 real solution. So don't get confused just because you guys see the word or the number 0. Don't say it's no solutions, it's 1 real solution. And here we have a 2x squared plus 6x equals negative 12. So first of all, let me just move everything to one side equal to 0. So I'm going to do the opposite of the minus 12. So that's going to be a positive 12 here. I'm going to add 12 over here. So we have 2x squared plus 6x plus 12 equal to, cancel this out, 0. Now we can find the a, the b, and the c. So a is 2, the one with the x squared, b is 6, the one with the x, and c is 12, the one with the constant. So you guys are going to use the discriminant, b squared minus 4 times a times c. So I'm going to substitute the b. So that's going to be 6 squared minus 4 times the a. That's going to be 2 times your c value, and that's going to be 12. So all of that equals to negative 60. Now, the number doesn't really tell you guys how many solutions, but the keyword is the negative. Negative 60. So let me write down the negative here. When you guys have a negative discriminant, it might be a negative 7, negative 2, negative 1, negative 100, negative 60, negative 80. When it's negative, we have no real solution. So what that means, let me just write that down first. No real solutions. So what that means is your parabola will not cross or touch the x-axis. So the u-shape is going to be on top of the x-axis going up, or on the bottom of the x-axis going down. But it will never touch, it will never cross the x-axis. Now, what does it mean by saying no real solution? Remember that in a number system, we have two types of numbers, real numbers or imaginary numbers, and imaginary numbers. So if we're saying that we do not have no real solutions, we don't have real solutions, then we are going to have imaginary solutions. In Algebra 1, we don't work with imaginary solutions, but when you guys go to your upper level math, Algebra 2 and so on, you guys will learn about imaginary and you will find those imaginary solutions. But for now, we're just going to say we do not have real solutions or no real solutions. You can say 0 real solutions, but no real solutions is fine. So this video is an introduction of the quadratic formula. I didn't show you guys the actual quadratic formula, but my next video will be using the whole thing. Right now, this is just the discriminant, which is a small part of that formula, the quadratic formula. So I'm going to do a second video. Make sure you guys check that out. If you guys like my videos, you can click that like button. You can also subscribe to my channel and make sure you guys practice your math, and I'll see you guys later.